tourists stunned as King's guards ride through sunset streets of London back to Buckingham Palace. The sun was beginning its slow descent over London, casting long, golden shadows across the city's streets. It was that magical hour when the city felt softer, quieter, and somehow more alive at the same time. Tourists wandered along the wide pavements near St. James's Park, their faces flushed with excitement and awe. Cameras clicked constantly, capturing everything from the famous red buses rolling past to the historic buildings that lined the streets. Yet on this particular evening, something unusual was about to happen. Something that would make this group of visitors remember London in a way no guidebook or postcard ever could. People had gathered casually at first, some sitting on the low stone walls near the park, others leaning on railings, enjoying ice creams or taking selfies with friends. Children ran a little ahead, pointing at squirrels and ducks in the park pond, laughing as they chased them across the grass. The air carried a mixture of scents: the faint aroma of roasted chestnuts from a nearby vendor, the smell of freshly cut grass from the park, and the occasional whiff of the Thames not far away. Tourists from different countries were chatting in different languages: French, Italian, Japanese, Spanish, all blending together in a soft, friendly hum that made the city feel alive and connected. Then, out of nowhere, a rhythmic sound started to cut through the chatter. It was faint at first, just a soft clip-clop, almost like someone tapping their shoes on the pavement. But the sound grew steadily louder, sharper, and more deliberate. Heads turned automatically. People paused mid-step, straining to see where the noise was coming from. Children stopped chasing each other, their heads tilting curiously, while parents lifted cameras to capture the approaching scene. Soon, the first glimpse appeared between the buildings. Dark silhouettes moved gracefully against the golden sky, and the unmistakable shape of a horse became visible. Not just one horse, but several, moving in perfect coordination. And atop each horse sat a guard in the traditional scarlet uniform, their black helmets shining faintly in the warm sunlight. A quiet hush fell over the crowd. People instinctively edged closer to the road, careful not to block the view. Even seasoned Londoners who had walked these streets for years seemed momentarily stunned. There was something mesmerizing about the sight, something timeless, like stepping into a living painting. The guards were not just any soldiers. They were the King's guards, entrusted with protecting the monarchy, carrying centuries of history on their shoulders. And seeing them like this, moving slowly and deliberately through the streets, made the ordinary city feel extraordinary. As the guards drew closer, the tourists began whispering excitedly. "Look at them," said one woman, her eyes wide with wonder. "Are they real guards?" asked a young boy, tugging at his mother's sleeve. Cameras clicked furiously as everyone tried to capture the moment, some holding phones high above their heads, others kneeling to get a perfect angle. It was rare to witness such a ceremonial procession outside of the palace itself, and the rarity only made it more magical. The horses themselves were magnificent creatures, large and muscular, yet moving with a smooth grace that seemed almost unreal. Their coats gleamed in the evening light, and their hooves struck the cobblestones with a rhythm that was both powerful and calming. Each horse moved as if perfectly in tune with the others, turning corners and adjusting steps without ever losing formation. Tourists leaned over the railings to get a better look, pointing at the carefully polished boots, the precise movements, and the stoic faces of the guards. The King's guards held their reins firmly but effortlessly, exuding confidence and discipline. They did not speak or acknowledge the crowd. Their focus was entirely on the path ahead. This silent dedication added to the sense of awe. People could feel the history in the air, the weight of centuries-old tradition, the echoes of countless ceremonies that had taken place long before any of them had arrived in London. Every click of a hoof against the stone seemed to reverberate with stories of kings and queens, of pageantry and pride, and of a city that had seen so much change yet remained connected to its past. Even the surrounding architecture seemed to participate in the moment. The old stone buildings, some dating back hundreds of years, reflected the warm glow of the setting sun. Flags fluttered gently in the breeze from distant rooftops, as though waving in honor of the passing guards. Streetlights, still just beginning to flicker on, cast soft golden halos around the edges of the buildings, creating a scene that looked almost magical. For a few moments, London seemed less like a bustling modern city, and more like a stage set for a grand historical performance. Tourists could not stop themselves from talking in excited whispers. "I've never seen anything like this," one man said, his camera forgotten for a moment as he watched the guards pass. A group of students from Italy pointed at the horses, trying to explain to each other the significance of the uniforms. Even people who were just walking home from work slowed their pace, stopping to witness the unusual parade. Everyone, no matter their background or destination, felt compelled to pause and be part of this shared moment of wonder. Children, especially, were captivated. Some held their parents' hands tightly, their eyes wide with fascination, while others jumped up and down, pointing at the guards and trying to mimic the soldiers' upright posture. Tourists jostled politely to get a better view, but there was an unspoken understanding among everyone in the crowd. This was a rare moment, something that demanded respect and quiet appreciation. Even the occasional dog barked in the distance seemed to harmonize with the steady rhythm of the horses' hooves. As the procession continued to approach, it became clear that this was not a hurried parade. The guards were moving at a deliberate, steady pace, giving the crowd plenty of time to appreciate the spectacle. Their presence commanded attention without demanding it, and their silent confidence inspired admiration. There was no music, no fanfare, just the natural sounds of the city, the hooves striking the pavement, and the soft murmur of amazed onlookers. And yet in that simplicity, the moment felt profound. By the time the first guards passed directly in front of the tourists, many could hardly believe what they were seeing. It was as if history had stepped out of the pages of a textbook and into the very streets beneath their feet. Some whispered to each other about the significance of the uniforms and the horses, while others simply stood in awe, too captivated to speak. Even the photographers, trained to capture moments professionally, found themselves caught in the beauty of the scene, adjusting lenses and angles to record the magic. Every detail seemed perfect. The careful alignment of the guards, the smooth rhythm of the horses, the gleaming scarlet tunics, the precise black boots, and the polished helmets reflecting the last rays of the sun. It was a scene that seemed to exist outside of time, a moment where the present and the past merged, allowing tourists to feel connected to a centuries-old tradition in a city that never ceased to move forward. As the guards continued down the street, the crowd followed instinctively, walking alongside in respectful silence. People exchanged smiles and quiet nods, acknowledging the shared experience without needing words. In that moment, strangers felt a small connection, united by the simple but extraordinary experience of watching the King's Guards move through London's sunset streets. The air was filled with a sense of calm excitement, a reminder that some things, discipline, tradition, and the beauty of a ceremonial parade, never lose their power to inspire awe. For the tourists, this was the beginning of a story they would tell for years. It was a moment that felt personal and universal at the same time. A simple evening in London transformed into a memory that would linger far longer than the setting sun. The anticipation of what would come next, as the guards made their way back to Buckingham Palace, kept the crowd on edge, their hearts quietly racing with excitement. And as they followed along the streets, cameras raised and eyes wide, it became clear that this was not just a spectacle. They were witnessing a living piece of history, unfolding right before them. As the tourists followed the rhythmic clatter of the hooves, the presence of the King's Guards became more commanding. Each step the horses took seemed to echo through the narrow streets, bouncing off the centuries-old buildings and filling the air with a strange, almost musical rhythm. The guards rode in perfect formation, their movements precise, as if they were part of an intricate dance that had been rehearsed for generations. Every turn they made, every shift of the horse's weight was executed with flawless discipline, leaving the spectators in awe of both the men and the animals. The street seemed to narrow as they moved past the historic landmarks. St. James's Park, with its lush green lawns and carefully maintained flower beds, fell away to reveal older streets lined with shops and cafes. The windows of the buildings caught the golden light of the setting sun, reflecting it in warm, flickering patterns that added a soft glow to the scene. Tourists pointed excitedly at the details, the ornate lamp posts, the statues tucked into corners, the cobblestones worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Even the pigeons, usually scattered across the streets, seemed to pause in quiet curiosity as the guards passed by. Children, still gripping their parents' hands, whispered to each other, asking questions they had never thought to ask before. "Why are they wearing red?" one child asked. Another answered, "It's their uniform." "They guard the king?" The simple curiosity of these young minds added a playful energy to the crowd, even as everyone maintained a respectful distance from the horses. Parents smiled at the exchange, grateful for the chance to witness a living lesson in history unfolding before them. As the guards proceeded, the rhythm of the hooves became hypnotic. It was impossible not to feel drawn into the procession, almost as if the entire city had slowed down to watch. People stopped mid-step on their way home, temporarily forgetting their errands, their phones, and even their worries. The spectacle held them captive, not through force, but through the quiet dignity of tradition. There was no shouting, no music, no dramatic display, only the sound of hooves, the soft murmurs of the crowd, and the occasional clink of metal from the guards' equipment. And yet, in its simplicity, the moment felt profoundly moving. Tourists whispered to each other, speculating about the history behind the guards. Some had read about the traditions in guidebooks, others had seen pictures, but none had expected to witness the ceremony in person. One man from Germany remarked softly, "It is like walking through history itself." A woman from Japan nodded in agreement, adding, "You can feel the stories in the streets. It is as if the past is alive right in front of us." Their words reflected a sentiment that ran through the entire crowd, a shared awe at the merging of past and present in a way that felt immediate and real. The guards themselves remained focused, their faces calm and expressionless. They did not acknowledge the crowd with waves or smiles, yet their presence was magnetic. It was as if they carried with them a quiet authority, a reminder that their role was not merely ceremonial, but a symbol of centuries of loyalty, discipline, and service. The precision with which they guided their horses, the way they maintained formation despite distractions, and the seamless coordination of every movement spoke volumes about the training and dedication required for their position. Horses, too, seemed to sense the importance of the moment. Their ears twitched attentively, eyes focused, and muscles moving with effortless grace. They navigated the streets with a kind of intelligence that made the procession appear almost choreographed. Onlookers marveled at the partnership between man and animal, recognizing the level of trust and communication required to achieve such perfection. Every horse was distinct, some black, some chestnut, others a deep brown, but all shared the same calm confidence, responding instantly to the subtle cues of their riders. As the procession wound its way further into the city, the surroundings changed subtly. The streets became slightly busier, with more shops and cafes lining the sidewalks. Evening shoppers paused, intrigued by the unusual sight, while people leaving work lingered to watch. There was a sense of shared excitement, a collective experience that united strangers in quiet appreciation. Photographers crouched low to capture the perfect angle, while others simply held their cameras at chest height, content to preserve the memory in a personal, private way. The setting sun continued its descent, casting a deeper orange glow over the scene. Shadows stretched across the streets, creating a dramatic contrast between light and dark. The warm light reflected off the polished boots of the guards and the gleaming helmets, adding an almost cinematic quality to the procession. Tourists and locals alike found themselves mesmerized by the beauty of the moment, as if London had transformed into a stage for a timeless performance. Even the air seemed to hum with anticipation, carrying the sounds of the horses and the murmurs of the crowd along every corner. A gentle breeze stirred, rustling the leaves of the trees in nearby squares and parks. The sound blended perfectly with the rhythmic clip-clop of the hooves, creating a serene soundtrack for the unfolding scene. Some visitors closed their eyes briefly, absorbing the atmosphere fully, while others whispered quietly to their companions about the perfection of the moment. It was a rare experience, one that did not require words, for the sight itself spoke volumes about tradition, discipline, and history. As the guards approached a slight curve in the street, the crowd instinctively moved closer, eager to follow the procession. Tourists craned their necks, trying to catch every detail. The way the horses lifted their hooves in unison, the subtle nods of the riders, the polished harnesses catching the fading sunlight. Each observer felt as if they were witnessing a story unfold before them. A story that had been written over hundreds of years, but was being told in real time right now. Children continued to react with pure wonder, some clapping their hands softly, others mimicking the soldiers' upright posture. One young girl giggled as her father pretended to march like a guard, and nearby, a group of teenagers whispered excitedly, discussing which horse looked the strongest or which guard seemed the tallest. Even casual passers-by found themselves drawn into the fascination, smiling at the shared excitement and feeling a connection to something greater than their everyday routines. The guards maintained their steady pace, allowing the crowd to savor each moment. There was no rush, no sense of hurry, just a slow, deliberate movement that gave the impression of importance, dignity, and purpose. It was a living reminder that some traditions are meant to be witnessed slowly, savored like fine art, and appreciated not just for their appearance, but for the history and discipline they represent. As the horses and guards turned another corner, the tourists realized they were part of a larger story. They were not mere spectators, they were witnesses to a piece of living history. Each step of the horses, each careful adjustment of the riders, and each breath of the crowd created a shared moment of significance. It was a rare experience that few had the opportunity to encounter, and everyone present understood the importance of being fully attentive, fully present, in that fleeting window of time. Finally, as the last light of the sun touched the tops of the buildings, the guards began to come into full view for everyone in the street. Their numbers seemed greater than expected, and the scale of the procession left the audience almost breathless. People instinctively raised their phones, taking photos and videos, eager to capture the moment while also knowing that no image could truly convey the experience. The combination of history, precision, and natural beauty created a memory that would linger far beyond the streets of London, a moment that would remain vivid in the minds of those fortunate enough to witness it. The crowd's excitement was quiet but palpable. There was no shouting or chaos, only a steady buzz of awe and admiration. Tourists exchanged glances and smiles, recognizing the shared privilege of being present. Even those who had seen pictures or videos before could feel that nothing compared to experiencing the King's Guards riding through the sunset streets in person. The scene was more than a display of discipline and tradition. It was a testament to the beauty of patience, precision, and pride carried forward across generations. As Part 2 drew to its natural close, the tourists followed the procession a little further down the street, hearts still racing with excitement. Each person carried a small piece of history with them, a story to tell to friends, family, and future generations. The city, bathed in the warm glow of sunset and filled with the rhythmic sound of hooves, seemed almost magical. And for everyone standing along the streets that evening, it was a reminder that some moments are meant to be witnessed, cherished, and remembered, not just for what they are, but for the way they make us feel. As the procession of the King's Guards moved steadily through the streets of London, the atmosphere became even more electric with anticipation. The tourists had followed for some distance now, their eyes wide, their cameras constantly clicking, and their hearts quietly racing. Every step the horses took seemed to echo louder in the narrow streets, a rhythmic reminder of the history and tradition unfolding right before them. The golden sunset bathed everything in a warm glow, making the guards' red uniforms look almost like fire against the darkening city. People began to whisper to one another, sharing their excitement and amazement. Some were pointing out details they had noticed, like the way the guards held their reins, the polished boots reflecting the light, or the precise coordination of the horses as they turned corners. Others were simply standing in quiet awe, unwilling to break the spell of the moment with words. It was a rare scene, one that combined elegance, discipline, and natural beauty in a way that felt almost unreal. Tourists from around the world were united by a single experience, their differences in language and culture temporarily forgotten. As the guards continued their journey, the streets became a little busier. Evening shoppers stopped to watch, their bags in hand, while pedestrians finishing their day's work paused mid-step, captivated by the spectacle. Even taxi drivers slowed down to catch a glimpse, leaning out their windows with curious expressions. The presence of the King's Guard seemed to demand attention without demanding respect. People were drawn to them naturally, unable to look away. It was a combination of history, precision, and silent authority that held everyone in thrall. Children were especially enchanted. Some tried to imitate the soldiers' upright posture, standing as straight as they could, while others clutched their parents' hands tightly, wide-eyed at the horses passing before them. One small boy whispered repeatedly, "Mom, they're real guards." "Look at them," his mother smiled, squeezing his hand and nodding, equally mesmerized by the sight. Nearby, a group of teenagers whispered in excited tones, pointing at the horses and speculating about their training and care. The fascination of the young brought a playful energy to the otherwise orderly crowd, adding layers of emotion to the scene. The guards themselves showed no sign of distraction. Their faces remained calm, stoic, and unwavering, projecting an aura of quiet confidence that made the moment feel even more profound. Each movement was precise, from the shift of a horse's weight to the subtle adjustment of a reinced man's grip. They did not acknowledge the crowd, they did not wave or nod. Their focus was entirely on the journey ahead, and in that focus there was a magnetic authority. Observers could feel the dedication required for such a role, the years of training and discipline that shaped each guard into a symbol of centuries-old tradition. The horses moved with equal precision. Their muscles flexed gracefully beneath their sleek coats, hooves striking the cobblestones in perfect rhythm. Their ears twitched attentively, and their eyes scanned the streets calmly, responding instantly to the subtle cues of their riders. There was a sense of partnership between horse and guard that was impossible to miss. Each movement was coordinated, each step calculated, creating a seamless display of power and grace. Tourists whispered to one another in admiration, marveling at the combination of discipline, skill, and trust between human and animal. The setting sun continued to deepen, casting long shadows across the streets and painting the city in shades of orange, pink, and gold. Light reflected off the guards' helmets and the polished metal fittings on the horses' saddles, giving the entire procession an almost magical glow. Streetlights flickered on slowly, adding a soft illumination that highlighted every movement and detail. For the tourists, it was as if the city had become a stage, and the king's guards were performing a dance choreographed over hundreds of years. Every angle, every gesture seemed intentional, drawing the eye and holding attention. Tourists whispered among themselves, sharing facts they had learned or observations they had made. "Did you know that these uniforms haven't changed much in over 300 years?" one woman asked her companion. Another replied, "Yes, and the horses are specially trained for city streets. They have to remain calm around crowds and noise." These snippets of knowledge only heightened the fascination. Observers felt like they were witnessing a living lesson in history, one that combined education and wonder in a way few classrooms ever could. As the guards moved further along the streets, the surrounding architecture seemed to enhance the experience. Historic buildings, some centuries old, stood tall and proud, their facades reflecting the soft light of the sunset. Flags fluttered gently in the evening breeze, as if waving in honor of the passing guards. Statues and monuments along the way seemed to watch silently, adding a sense of timelessness to the moment. Even the smallest details, the ironwork on a gate, the curve of a window frame, the gentle sway of a tree branch, added to the richness of the scene, making it feel like a living tapestry. The crowd followed patiently, careful not to disrupt the procession. People moved together, almost instinctively, respecting both the horses and the guards. There was an unspoken understanding that this was a moment to be experienced quietly, savored fully, and remembered. Photographers tried to capture every angle, but even the best photos could not convey the feeling of standing among the crowd, breathing the evening air, hearing the hooves echo, and witnessing history unfold. As the guards approached a slight rise in the street, the horses' movement seemed even more deliberate. Each step was measured, precise, and smooth, demonstrating their training and the skill of their riders. Tourists watched closely, fascinated by the control and discipline displayed. Some children clutched their parents' hands tightly, others pointed excitedly, whispering about the majesty of the horses and the uniforms. Even those who had seen similar scenes before found themselves caught up in the beauty and elegance of the moment. The quiet excitement of the crowd was almost palpable. People spoke in hushed tones, careful not to disturb the rhythm of the procession. There was a sense of shared reverence, a collective understanding that they were witnessing something rare and meaningful. The combination of history, tradition, and the beauty of the city at sunset created an experience that felt larger than life. For a few hours, the ordinary world faded away, replaced by the extraordinary spectacle of the king's guards moving through London's streets. The horses' hooves struck the cobblestones in perfect rhythm, a sound that seemed to echo through time. Each clip and clop reminded the onlookers of centuries of tradition, of the guards who had ridden these streets for generations. Even casual passers-by paused to watch, feeling a connection to history and the discipline it demanded. The sight was more than just ceremonial. It was a reminder of the enduring values of honor, dedication, and respect. As the guards moved closer to a busy intersection, the crowd naturally grew denser. Tourists adjusted their positions to get better views, raising cameras high or stepping onto benches and low walls. Some whispered to each other about the training required for the horses, others speculated on the daily routines of the guards. Everyone shared a sense of wonder, as if they were part of a collective story unfolding in real time. Even the sounds of the modern city, the distant hum of traffic, the chatter of pedestrians, the occasional bicycle bell, seemed to fade into the background, replaced by the steady rhythm of the horses and the quiet awe of the crowd. As the sun continued its descent, the city took on a softer, more golden hue. Shadows lengthened, and the streets glowed with a warmth that highlighted every detail of the guards, the horses, and the surrounding buildings. Tourists captured countless photos, but most simply watched, knowing that some moments could not be fully preserved in images. They felt privileged to be present, witnessing a tradition that had endured for centuries, unfolding in a modern city that still remembered and respected its history. By the time the guards reached a small square, the full scale of the procession became apparent. More riders joined from side streets, each perfectly aligned with the others, creating a visual spectacle that left the audience breathless. Tourists whispered in awe, pointing out the perfect coordination, the gleaming helmets, and the disciplined posture of every rider. Children clapped softly, adults smiled, and everyone felt a shared sense of wonder that transcended language, culture, and background. The atmosphere was electric yet calm, a rare combination that made the moment feel both exciting and serene. The guards continued their march with unwavering focus, and the horses responded with equal discipline. Every step, every turn, every subtle adjustment demonstrated years of training, dedication, and a deep understanding between rider and animal. For the crowd, it was a lesson in excellence and tradition, a reminder that some things, no matter how old, still held the power to captivate and inspire. As Part 3 drew to a close, the tourists realized that this journey was more than a simple parade. It was a living story of history, discipline, and the beauty of shared human experience. The streets of London, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, had become a stage for a moment that would linger in the memory of everyone present. And as the guards continued their path toward Buckingham Palace, the crowd followed silently, eager to witness what would come next, knowing that the magic of this evening would remain with them long after the horses had disappeared from view. The streets of London seemed to take on a new life as the king's guards advanced, their red uniforms glowing against the soft amber light of the early evening. The sun had dipped lower, casting long shadows across the cobblestones, creating patterns that shifted with every step of the horses. Tourists followed closely, their cameras clicking, but more often they simply watched, unable to tear their eyes away from the impressive display. The city, usually filled with the hustle and bustle of daily life, had quieted in reverent anticipation. Even the usual noise of traffic seemed to fade into the background, as the sound of hooves and soft murmurs of admiration filled the air. The procession turned down a slightly narrower street, flanked on both sides by historic buildings whose facades reflected centuries of London's history. The architecture, a mix of stone and brick, seemed to frame the scene perfectly, highlighting the contrast between the modern city and the ceremonial past. Flags hung from balconies and flagpoles, fluttering gently in the evening breeze, as if they themselves were honoring the passage of the guards. Windows along the street were open, and residents paused to look down, many waving quietly to the crowd or photographing the rare event. Children's excitement grew with each passing step. Some pointed at the polished boots of the guards, others stared wide-eyed at the towering horses, whispering to their parents about how big and strong they appeared. One small girl, perched on her father's shoulders, tried to mimic the guard's upright posture, straightening her tiny back and holding an imaginary rein. Her laughter was contagious, spreading through the crowd in small, joyful bursts, but it never disturbed the quiet dignity of the scene. The presence of children made the moment feel even more human, adding warmth to the grandeur of the ceremonial display. The guards maintained their focus, riding with an almost hypnotic precision. Their faces were calm, their eyes forward, and every movement carefully controlled. There was no sign of distraction, no hint of fatigue, and no acknowledgement of the crowd. And yet, their silent determination spoke louder than words ever could. Tourists could feel the discipline and dedication required for such a role, imagining the years of training that shaped each guard into a symbol of honor and loyalty. It was not just a parade, it was a living testament to centuries of tradition. The horses, magnificent and powerful, moved in perfect rhythm with one another. Their hooves struck the cobblestones with a steady, deliberate sound that echoed through the surrounding streets. Each horse responded instantly to subtle cues from its rider, whether a slight tug on the reins or a gentle shift in weight. Observers could see the partnership between human and animal, a relationship built on trust, respect, and countless hours of training. Every flick of an ear, every lift of a hoof, added to the mesmerizing precision of the procession. As the column of guards turned another corner, they entered a part of the city filled with historic landmarks. Statues of famous figures lined the sidewalks, and plaques marked the locations of important events from centuries past. The tourists were struck by the juxtaposition, the past and present coexisting in a single moment. The guards, riding with silent authority, seemed almost like characters from a history book brought to life. The streets, illuminated by the remaining sunlight and the early glow of street lamps, created a scene that felt cinematic, almost surreal in its beauty and quiet power. Adults in the crowd whispered softly to one another, sharing facts and observations. Some spoke about the history of the king's guards, others about the horses, and many commented on the beauty of the evening light. A tourist from Spain remarked, "It feels like the city itself is celebrating with us." A woman from Canada nodded, adding, "Yes, everything feels connected, the buildings, the guards, even the air seems alive." The shared experience created a quiet bond among the spectators, uniting people from all walks of life in a moment of collective awe and appreciation. As the guards advanced further, the streets began to widen slightly, allowing a clearer view of the procession. The crowd instinctively stepped back to give room, maintaining a respectful distance from the horses. Some tourists held their cameras high, trying to capture the perfect shot, while others simply observed, knowing that some experiences are better felt than photographed. The rhythmic sound of hooves, combined with the faint rustle of leaves in nearby trees, created a soothing soundtrack that complemented the visual spectacle. Even the weather seemed to join in the ceremony. A gentle breeze moved through the streets, carrying with it the faint scent of flowers from nearby parks and gardens. The air was cool but pleasant, perfect for standing outdoors and watching a parade unfold. Clouds above reflected the orange and pink hues of the setting sun, casting a warm light across the city that seemed to enhance every detail. The gleam of the guards' helmets, the polished saddles, and the muscular contours of the horses. Every element of the scene contributed to the sense that something extraordinary was happening, something beyond ordinary time and space. The guards' disciplined formation remained flawless as they passed through the streets. Each rider adjusted slightly to maintain alignment with the others, every horse responding instinctively to the commands of its rider. Tourists could see the care and coordination involved, understanding that this precision did not happen by chance. It was a combination of training, experience, and a deep respect for the tradition they represented. The sight was inspiring, reminding the crowd that discipline and dedication can create moments of true beauty. Children continued to react with excitement. Some clapped softly, others jumped up and down on the spot, and a few tried to copy the movements of the guards in playful imitation. Parents smiled, some laughing quietly, while others gently reminded their children to stay close. Even the youngest spectators seemed to understand the importance of the moment, their curiosity and wonder adding to the energy of the scene. For many, it was an unforgettable experience, a story that they would carry with them for a lifetime. As the procession reached a slight incline, the guards' movements appeared even more deliberate. The horses lifted their hooves carefully, maintaining their rhythm and alignment. Observers could see the muscles flexing beneath the animals' coats, the subtle shifts in weight, and the seamless communication between rider and horse. It was a testament to the countless hours of training and preparation that had gone into creating this display, and the crowd could not help but marvel at the skill and dedication involved. Tourists whispered among themselves, sharing impressions and observations. "It is incredible how calm the horses are," one said, "and the guards never break formation," another added. There was a sense that everyone present recognized the rarity of the event, a moment when history, tradition, and modern life converged in the streets of London. It was a reminder that some experiences are timeless, transcending generations and connecting people across cultures and languages. The streets themselves seemed to participate in the moment. Cobblestones, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, reflected the soft glow of streetlights, creating a path that seemed almost ceremonial. Buildings, some dating back hundreds of years, framed the scene, their facades glowing in the warm evening light. The city felt alive, as if it were acknowledging the significance of the parade and joining in the silent celebration of tradition. Even pigeons and other birds seemed to pause, watching as the guards passed with quiet attention. As the guards approached the next intersection, the crowd thickened. More spectators joined, drawn by the rhythmic sound of hooves and the sight of the red uniforms against the golden light. People jostled politely to get a better view, raising cameras and phones while still maintaining a respectful distance. There was an unspoken understanding among the crowd. This was a moment to be observed carefully, to be savored fully, and to be remembered forever. It was a shared experience, creating a temporary community united by awe and admiration. The sun dipped even lower, casting long shadows and enhancing the drama of the scene. The guards' helmets gleamed, reflecting the final rays of sunlight, while the horses' polished saddles caught the light in small flashes. Every detail, from the precise alignment of the riders to the rhythm of the horses' steps, contributed to the grandeur of the procession. Tourists could not stop themselves from watching, fully absorbed in the moment, aware that they were witnessing something extraordinary. As the procession continued, the tourists felt a mixture of excitement and reverence. The display was more than ceremonial. It was a living reminder of history, tradition, and the dedication required to maintain such rituals. Every observer, young or old, seemed to understand that they were part of a rare experience, one that connected the past to the present and allowed the beauty of discipline and precision to shine through. By the time Part 4 reached its conclusion, the King's Guards were approaching the final stretch of their journey toward Buckingham Palace. The streets were filled with a mixture of awe, quiet excitement, and anticipation. Tourists followed closely, hearts pounding with admiration and curiosity, knowing that they were witnessing a moment that would remain etched in their memories forever. Every step, every sound, and every glance contributed to a story that was unfolding in real time. A story of tradition, elegance, and the enduring magic of London itself. The King's Guards finally neared Buckingham Palace, their steady rhythm of hooves echoing across the streets as the evening sun dipped toward the horizon. The golden light had faded to a warm, soft orange, and the city seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. Tourists had followed every step of the procession, their eyes wide, their cameras raised, yet many found themselves simply watching, captivated by the grandeur and discipline of the guards. The sense of history and tradition was palpable, almost tangible in the cool evening air. As the palace gates came into view, the tourists grew silent, sensing the significance of the approaching moment. Buckingham Palace, with its towering facade and ornate balconies, seemed even more majestic against the darkening sky. The red uniforms of the guards stood out vividly against the pale stone of the palace, and the polished helmets gleamed as the last rays of sunlight caught their edges. Children clutched their parents' hands, some pointing excitedly at the grand building, whispering questions about who lived there and the purpose of the guards. Even adults felt a quiet thrill at seeing the palace in person, a structure they had often seen only in photographs or on television. The horses moved with unerring precision, navigating the final stretch of the route without hesitation. Every hoof struck the ground in perfect rhythm, every movement calculated, smooth, and elegant. Observers could see the subtle communication between rider and horse, a gentle pull of the reins, a shift in weight, a slight tilt of the head, all perfectly timed. The trust and coordination were evident, a testament to the countless hours of training and dedication required to participate in such a procession. Tourists whispered among themselves, noting how impressive the horses were, their strength, discipline, and calm demeanor in the midst of a crowded city street. The atmosphere around Buckingham Palace was electric yet serene. The crowd had grown larger as the guards approached, with locals and tourists alike pausing to witness the final approach. Streetlights cast a warm glow over the scene, while the palace's exterior seemed to shimmer softly in the twilight. People instinctively gave space for the horses to pass, moving together with a quiet sense of respect and shared anticipation. Some photographers adjusted their cameras for the perfect shot, but many others simply observed, knowing that no picture could fully capture the awe of the moment. As the procession neared the palace gates, a sense of ceremony filled the air. The guards, despite the attention and excitement, maintained their calm, disciplined demeanor. Their upright posture, steady eyes, and precise control of the horses projected an authority that was both dignified and reassuring. Tourists watched in silence, struck by the combination of power and grace, of history and present that defined the king's guards. It was a rare sight that seemed to transport everyone present into a different time, a moment when tradition and modern life intersected perfectly. Children still fascinated whispered excitedly to their parents. "They are like real kings and queens," one exclaimed. Another said, "Look at their horses, they are so strong." Parents smiled, nodding in agreement while gently holding their children close. There was laughter here and there, soft and joyful, but it never disturbed the solemnity of the occasion. The combination of youthful excitement and quiet admiration created a unique energy, a mix of playfulness and reverence that made the moment even more memorable. The palace gates, tall and ornate, opened slowly to welcome the guards. The click of hooves on the stone pathway grew louder as the horses approached the entrance. Tourists leaned forward slightly, craning their necks for a better view, aware that they were witnessing the final stage of a remarkable journey. Even those who had seen ceremonial events before were captivated, noting the seamless coordination, the calm authority of the guards, and the elegance of the horses. There was a feeling among the spectators that this was a rare and special moment, one that would remain vivid in their memories for years to come. The guards moved steadily into the palace grounds, maintaining their formation as they crossed the threshold. The crowd watched in awe as the last of the riders passed through the gates, their red uniforms bright against the darkened palace walls. Children clapped softly, some jumping up and down with excitement, while adults nodded appreciatively, many whispering quietly to each other about the impressive display. It was not just a parade. It was a living piece of history, a glimpse into centuries of tradition and ceremony that had survived and thrived in the heart of modern London. The horses, now inside the palace grounds, moved gracefully along the pathway, their movements fluid and controlled. Tourists watched as the guards guided their mounts with expert precision, turning corners and adjusting speed without breaking the rhythm or formation. The sound of hooves striking the stone echoed through the courtyard, a steady, hypnotic beat that seemed to blend perfectly with the quiet excitement of the spectators. Even the occasional flutter of flags or rustle of leaves seemed to harmonize with the natural rhythm of the procession, adding to the sense of harmony and order. Some visitors took a moment to reflect quietly on what they were seeing. The king's guards were more than soldiers. They were symbols of discipline, dedication, and tradition. Every movement, every gesture, every perfectly timed step spoke of a legacy that had endured for centuries. Tourists felt a deep respect for the guards and the work that went into maintaining such a high level of excellence. The horses, too, were part of this living tradition, their strength and training essential to the elegance and precision of the ceremony. Observers marveled at the partnership between human and animal, understanding that both were equally vital to the success of the procession. As the guards approached the final position in the courtyard, the crowd fell into an attentive hush. Children stood on tiptoe, parents held cameras at chest height, and even the most casual passerby seemed absorbed in the unfolding scene. The palace, bathed in the gentle light of the evening, provided a dramatic backdrop that highlighted the red uniforms, polished boots, and gleaming helmets of the guards. Every element, The horses, the riders, the architecture, and even the fading sunlight worked together to create a moment of extraordinary beauty and solemnity. The guards finally came to a halt in front of the palace entrance. The horses' breathing slowed, and their hooves rested lightly on the ground. The riders remained upright, their expressions calm and unwavering, maintaining the dignity and authority that had defined the entire procession. Tourists clapped softly, some taking final photos, while others simply stood in quiet admiration. There was a shared sense of accomplishment and satisfaction among the crowd, a recognition that they had witnessed something truly special. Children whispered excitedly about the grandeur of the palace and the beauty of the horses. Parents smiled knowingly, understanding that this was a memory their children would treasure forever. Adults exchanged glances and soft words of appreciation, some commenting on the history, others on the discipline and coordination displayed by the guards. There was a sense of connection in the air, a feeling that everyone present had been part of a singular, remarkable event. The evening air was filled with a quiet sense of reverence and wonder. The crowds began to disperse slowly, many lingering for a few more moments to soak in the atmosphere. Some continued to take photographs, while others simply observed the guards as they remained in position. The sun had nearly set, leaving a soft twilight that added a magical quality to the palace courtyard. The sounds of the city gradually returned, the distant hum of traffic, the chatter of passers-by, and the occasional call of a bird. But the memory of the guards' procession lingered in the hearts of those who had witnessed it. As tourists began to leave, many spoke softly to each other about what they had seen. "It was incredible," one woman said. "I've never felt anything like it," a man replied. Children recounted the details enthusiastically, pointing out the shiny helmets, the strong horses, and the impressive coordination of the guards. Families left together, their conversations filled with excitement and wonder, carrying with them the story of a magical evening that had connected them to centuries of history and tradition. For those who had been there, the experience was more than a ceremonial display. It was a lesson in discipline, a celebration of heritage, and a moment of shared humanity. The king's guards, through their unwavering dedication, had provided a spectacle that transcended time, bringing the past into the present and allowing everyone present to feel a part of something enduring and significant. The horses, the uniforms, the precision, and the quiet authority of the guards combined to create a memory that would remain vivid long after the tourists had left the streets of London. As the last of the visitors departed, the palace gates closed quietly behind the guards. The horses were guided to their stables, their hooves echoing softly on the stone floor, and the guards dismounted with calm efficiency. The city gradually returned to its usual rhythm, the streets once again filled with the sounds of everyday life. Yet for those who had witnessed the evening's events, London had changed for a brief, unforgettable moment. They had seen history in motion, a living tradition carried forward by disciplined guards and magnificent horses, leaving an impression that would linger for a lifetime. The story of that evening, the tourists' wonder, the beauty of the sunset, the rhythm of hooves, the gleaming uniforms, and the majestic palace, would be told and retold, each telling preserving the magic of the experience. The king's guards had completed their journey with grace and precision, reminding everyone present that some traditions endure not because they are required, but because they inspire, connect, and captivate generations.